Hello everybody, I'm KC and welcome to another edition of Let's Talk About. Today, let's talk about the Ducktales Season 1 finale, Shadow War. Well, this is it. The first season of Ducktales was pretty great as a whole, despite some unfortunate airing schedules and some lackluster episodes to go with the show's apparently adventurous tone, but that's beside the point. For a first season of a TV show, there are some episodes that are more important than others. The pilot, obviously, to bring people in and introduce them to this new yet familiar world. The second episode that, while smaller, should show that you can keep up the promise of the first, and the final episode. A lot has happened this season, and the last episode left the family divided by the reveal of what happened to Della and the hurtful words that followed. So this episode, more than most in the series, had a lot to do. Even if most of us knew there was already a season 2 on the way, there was still a lot of expectations and a lot to come together for this inaugural season's curtain call. So let's take a look at the hour-long season finale. Everyone is still mad about what happened in the last episode. The boys are trying their best to move on, but clearly miss the adventurous lifestyle they've become accustomed to. Except for Dewey, who, while he's not happy about being back on the houseboat, is trying to get rid of all ties to Scrooge and the relics from their adventures. In fact, there's a lot of callbacks to previous episodes, whether it's returning characters, running jokes and returning lines, or marbles.
So, do children still like marbles, or
What do children like? Play marbles?
There's even a moment where Scrooge reminisces about the boys when he finds some. I think this is clever, but it's a pretty weird choice of running joke. Meanwhile, Webby and Launchpad can't stand to see their surrogate family broken, so they set up a scheme to get everyone back together. A lot of fans complain about this, mostly because after what Scrooge said to Webby in his outburst,
"This is a family matter. You are not family."
Some feel like he got away with that, since he never apologized, and Webby doesn't seem too hurt by it for very long after it happened. To that I say, Webby has waited her whole life for friends and family, especially for her family to include Scrooge. She values it more than anything, but isn't so wrapped up in her own pride and hurt feelings to blind her to the fact that those very things are driving them apart. I absolutely buy that the words Scrooge said would hurt Webby in the moment, but pretty quickly after, she would consider it water off a duck's back. Webby just wants her new family together, and so does Launchpad. But I don't think that needs any explanation, it's Launchpad. But on the other side of town, Scrooge has locked himself in the mansion, and the only other person he lets inside is Magica the Spell, who was able to possess Lena's body in a previous episode, complete with this terrifying animation of Magica's shadow literally leaking out of Lena's face when Lena tries to fight back. It's a pretty horrifying image, but I appreciate how the animators didn't make it too disturbing. There are many animated shows that would have made this sequence tough to watch instead of slightly uncomfortable. Like with the Della backstory in the last episode, Shadow War has one of the season's biggest ongoing storylines come to a head. Armed with an upcoming eclipse, because in fiction all eclipses carry magical properties, Magica heads to the manor to face Scrooge for the ultimate revenge. Instead, she finds this.
Wait, what?
Yeah, Scrooge isn't doing great. At first, just how quickly Scrooge has just given up might seem a bit extreme, and to be fair, the extremity is part of the comedy, but it's not that far-fetched. Keep in mind that for Scrooge, this was take 2. He had lost his family once before after the incident with the Spear of Selene, and by some miraculous coincidence, he was given another chance. And throughout the course of the season, he seized it. He had all the kids to go on exciting adventures with, sometimes with Donald coming along again, and not only helped the kids grow and improve, but opened his heart again to new possibilities. He's learned just as much from the kids as they have from him. So there's not only that he messed that up again, but it happened because he had to confess the greatest mistake of his life and was persecuted for it. And in the end, lost even more than he did last time. For all we know, if Scrooge didn't have at least Beakley and Duckworth 10 years ago, this might have happened after he lost Della and Donald too. He was already considered a recluse when the series began, remember? Just one that wasn't drowning in pizza. And on its own, this would just be sad and kind of funny, but what really sells the subplot is disguised Magica is still trying to get Scrooge's dime, but gets annoyed when Scrooge's pathetic state gets in the way of her sabotage. I loved this. The idea that Magica feels insulted for not getting a fight with Scrooge McDuck at his best for her revenge, to the point that she tries to motivate him to get back on his feet, is just too funny to me, and probably makes sense for for someone who's been stuck in a dime for 15 years and has only been thinking of this moment. And I want to give a special mention to both Catherine Tate and Kimiko Glenn. The voices swap out the whole time Magica is pretending to be Lena, and both of them make her a very entertaining villain. Back on the boat, Beakley is helping Webby and Launchpad get the Duck family back together, and it is the best. Beakley's always been a sort of voice of reason, but having known Scrooge as long as she has, she can offer a calm and collective perspective on this whole situation. I don't even think I need to analyze it. Beakley kind of sums up the holes in the kids' thinking and why they're mad at Scrooge and how much Scrooge has suffered pretty perfectly, and her words have the boys see their cool uncle through a new lens. When you're a kid, adults can seem perfect, like they always know what they're doing, especially someone like Scrooge McDuck, who is a legend that the boys looked up to long before they realized they were related. But the closer you get to being an adult, the more you realize that that isn't true. They make mistakes that they can't fix. They say things they shouldn't. And realizing that is a big part of growing up as a kid. It's an important lesson for these three to learn, that they shouldn't hate Scrooge for making a mistake that hurt him as much as it hurt them. But there's someone else at this table who looks like he's learning something as well. After the last crash of the Sun Chaser, everyone was being blamed for something. Scrooge, Della, the boys, everyone in the family, except Donald. And why would anyone blame him? With this new information, we see that he tried to talk Della out of doing something so dangerous with her children on the way, and when things go awry, he sacrifices everything to raise these kids. His entire world revolves around them, and he sheltered them because he loved them so much and was so afraid of losing them like he lost his sister. This episode even finally gives Donald the appreciation he deserves and a couple of seconds of praise for being such a good uncle and guardian. But that doesn't mean he's without fault. It's not said as explicitly as with the others, but it's definitely there. This moment is where I realized that Donald did the exact same thing the boys did. He abandoned Scrooge for his mistake. Just like the kids when they found out what happened, he needed someone to blame for this. And because Della wasn't around, he blamed Scrooge and never spoke to him for 10 years. To the point that the boys didn't even know that Scrooge McDuck was their great uncle, and they knew nothing about their own mother beyond one photograph. Presumably, Donald kept everything about her from her own sons, and in Louie's words, that is not okay. And think about his actions in this episode. After they get back to the marina, Donald tries to have things go back to the way they were. When that doesn't work, he tries to pack up the kids and move away to Cape Suzette. Sure, he is trying to make the boys happy again, but do you see the problem here? He never talks about this new information the boys learned, or tries to get them to understand it better, because until this moment, he wanted to distance himself from it too. But once Beakley lays everything out, it clicks for Donald, that his family being apart has never solved anything, and that it's time to fix that together. And it's only once Donald stands up for Scrooge as well, are all the kids, even Dewey, convinced to go back. And while Donald and the boys learn this lesson through Beakley, Scrooge sees the error of his ways through Lena, who has never had the somewhat healthy and supportive family structure that Scrooge has had. Sure, it's big and complicated and kind of confusing, but at the end of the day, still supportive. This whole season has been about Scrooge reconnecting with something he thought he had lost forever and understanding them more in the process. Well, at least in the episodes he was actually in. And as dysfunctional as it gets, I like that someone who isn't lucky enough to have that set Scrooge straight. Too bad it was after Magica succeeded in releasing herself and goes back to looking good. I know some people were iffy on the design change, but I like it. It's a bit more distinct and eye-catching, especially with the color choices, but that's just me. And from this point on, Magica just becomes a great villain in general. Once again, I can't account for the accuracy in terms of staying loyal to previous incarnations, but what we see in the reboot may result in my favorite DuckTales villain yet. She's a powerful threat with a solid plan, an awesome design for a formidable foe worthy of the season finale, and Catherine Tate's voice work gives us some of the best lines in the episode.
Tennis thing! Sports!
Now the family has come to their senses and wants to get back together, Magica drives them further apart, immobilizing Lena, trapping Scrooge in his dime, and calls forth an army to the money bin comprised of living shadows. Are you kidding me? You know, I've been making it a running gag to include a 10th Doctor clip in episodes featuring Scrooge, and sometimes it's challenging, but they gave this one to me on a silver platter. Roll it!
Almost every species in the universe has an irrational fear of the dark. But they're wrong. Because it's not irrational. It's
Magica Dispel. I'll be shocked if I'm the only reviewer who made that reference. The abduction of other people's shadows also features some appearances from many side characters we've seen throughout the course of the season. A totally isolated incident that won't lead to any long-term consequences down the road. Honest. Still, it is pretty fun to see just who gets caught in the chaos. Speaking of which, hi Fenton.
Blathering blatherskite!
Bye, Fenton. Boy, he is really bad at keeping a hold of that thing. Well, I was wondering why he wasn't wearing the suit in the Comic-Con preview, and I do appreciate that even without the Gizmo suit, Fenton still gets to be proactive and charges into the fight. It shows how much of a hero he can be even without the gadgets. Anyway, at this point, the whole family, and Gyro and Manny, band together to save Scrooge and defeat Magica, with each character being able to make a fun and unique contribution. From Beakley laying down some spy moves and pummeling shadows, at the cost of Donald's boat, to Launchpad not being able to crash into the money bin, which is really funny, to Gyro giving Donald a bit of a change in tone.
You mad scientist?
Is that my voice? Oh well.
This was a teaser clip before the episode aired, and it was met with some mixed reactions. I think some people were worried that, like how they made the triplets sound more normal, they were going to do the same to Donald. But many also knew that they would never change Donald's iconic voice permanently, and just thought it was weird conceptually. Personally, I found this priceless. When I covered this reveal in my Comic-Con impression, a good friend of mine was quick to tell me that this wasn't the first time they changed Donald's voice, as I incorrectly assumed. And indeed, I was able to find at least one Donald Duck short with this very premise.
Well, why don't you?
Say something.
But even if this isn't the first time this has happened, the juxtaposition is still hysterical, especially with how much more serious the others take Donald after getting the voice of War Machine himself, Don Cheadle. And some of these line reads are just...
Get ready for the storm.
I am the storm.
Oh, it's too good. But I also think there was a big missed opportunity here. In the middle of the final battle, the modulator starts malfunctioning and keeps shocking Donald, sometimes reverting back to his normal voice. When I first saw this thing, and specifically at this part, I thought that maybe Donald would start sounding like all sorts of people. They could have even slipped in character voices like Goofy and Mickey Mouse. Also, I cannot be the only one who was looking for a living Mickey Mouse shadow. Come on, they trained us with all that hidden Mickey stuff over the last few years. They could have put one in. The only reason I can think of for not doing this was for the sake of budget. It might have cost more to bring in additional voice actors for one-line gags, but they've got voice actors on call who can do all sorts of impressions. I love what we did get, but I can't help but feel like there could have been a little bit more. And while we're talking about Donald, I want to take a second to appreciate his character development. After that perspective he gained earlier, Donald dives full force into this mission to rescue Scrooge. He charges straight into action and even trusts the kids enough to take action themselves to sneak into the money bin, and distracts Magica's army so they can rescue Scrooge. I know most fans are quick to appreciate Donald as best parental figure, but I sometimes feel like that comes at the cost of acknowledging this great development. For the first time in DuckTales 2017, Donald charges into danger head-on with the spirit of adventure and the love for his long-estranged family member burning bright. And that is wonderful to see. And Donald isn't the only one who's come full circle. Of course, the boys and Webby disobeyed what they thought were Donald's wishes, and as I mentioned, sneak into the money bin to rescue Scrooge. And their confrontation with Magica is where we see just how far they've all come as adventurers. Throughout the course of the season, they've been learning how to hone their skills practically and responsibly now that they've been put in more life-threatening situations. With Louie, he uses his smooth-talking, truth-bending skills to trick Magica. Turns out lying is the responsible thing to do. And he even perfected the money dive. That's sweet. With Huey, he uses the power known to all internet dwellers, nitpicking.
You were caught in the dime. How come we never saw you in it? Also, Scrooge isn't exactly magical, so how did he manage to trap you in it? Follow-up, how does the lunar eclipse factor into all this?
It's just magic, okay?
It's magic. I don't have to explain it.
With Dewey, he continues to charge into action while working together with his brothers and Webby, and not just charging in without a plan, managing to grab the dime and properly apologize to Scrooge. And while Webby didn't really need to advance her skills, she was already pretty badass and puts up an impressively good fight against Magica. Where Webby's development over the course of the series lies is with her best friend. It was revealed earlier in the episode that Lena isn't Magica's niece, but an extension of her shadow, an agent created solely to get Scrooge's #1 dime. And yeah, Webby feels sad and betrayed by that. You can even hear it in the questioning tone she has when reading the text that revealed this. Props to Kate Micucci here, by the way, it's a great read. That's why she fights back so hard against Magica. She's taking out all of that hurt at not only creating something she got so attached to, but taking it away and using it to hurt her family. As we saw in the beginning, Webby doesn't really hold grudges, and will fight to no end to keep the one she loves together. And that group has gotten so much bigger since the series began. That's what's so great about Webby beyond the giddy fangirl who's ready for a fight. Her capacity for her loved ones, even when they don't express it themselves. Because even after this revelation, she isn't mad at Lena and still considers her her friend. And that doesn't go unnoticed. Lena does end up fighting back, supposedly sacrificing herself in the process. Or did she? Scrooge did promise her a place in his family if she got them back together, and she did her part. Lena for honorary McDuck family member. Make it happen, season 2. It's a great final battle, and they emerge victorious as Scrooge is free from the dime, somehow, and takes on Magica hand in hand like his old self, tougher than the toughies and smarter than the smarties. And now with backup. With that, Magica is defeated and stripped of her powers. Yet she still manages to be immensely entertaining.
You haven't seen the last of me!
She's gone! Oh wait, there she is!
And while nobody bothers to detain her or even go after her, there are family hugs and a sweet reunion, so I'm cool with it. Because overall, Shadow War is a very satisfying conclusion to this first season of DuckTales 2017. This episode had a lot to accomplish, more than I think most season 1 finales do. Not only wrapping up more than one ongoing storyline from throughout the season, not only dealing with the aftermath of the emotional gut punch that was Last Crash of the Sun Chaser in a timely yet believable way, but showing just how far everyone in this massive cast has come and how much they've grown because of each other. And it succeeds, using everything at their disposal very effectively. Everyone gets a chance to shine in one form or another. The revelations the Duck family comes to makes their eventual reunion all the more satisfying, and the obstacles keeping them apart were more challenging than anything else in the series up to this point, both internally and externally. The action is creative and entertaining, showing progression and even subverting expectations. The voice acting is some of the best in the series, the writing is equally suspenseful, emotional, and has some hilarious lines and callbacks, and watching it again, it really shows just how rewarding the audience's investment in the rest of the season is, because almost every single episode was leading to this in some form or another. Especially for Huey, Dewey, and Louie, with the final battle being an amazing conclusion, showing the strengths the kids had all along, and how their journeys over the last 23 episodes have made them more mature. Every single episode was slowly building these bonds into something truly special. I came into this reboot of DuckTales not really knowing what to expect, even though I was excited for it, and now I am fully invested in this world and the lives these characters live in it, whether on globe-trotting adventures or never leaving the mansion. And depending on when I manage to get this up, it looks like season 2 will still have some mysteries to unravel.
Boys?
Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.